Hi, class. So we are going to continue on this combining like terms and distributive property today. So we had page 15 of workbook 2. We got quite a few wrong on that one. So we're going to work specifically on that page. So this is workbook 2, page 15. And while this says combining like terms, it's actually combining like terms and using the distributive property. So this is a combination of both of those concepts that we've been working on. And as we move forward, you'll see that we're going to need to use both of those concepts together, solving these one and two step equations. So let's get started on one of the first ones that was a problem for a few of you. So number 9, this is page 15 of workbook 2, number 9. So it's 4x plus 9y. It's let me restate that. It's 4 parentheses x plus 9y and then negative 2 and then in parentheses 2x plus 4y. So let's go ahead and do our first step first. Whenever we see these parentheses here, that means distribution. So we're going to have to distribute this first. And just as a quick review, when we distribute, we take everything on the outside and we multiply it to everything on the inside. So your number on the outside would be multiplied towards each of these in the inside. So 4 times x would be 4x. And then our next one would be 4 times 9y, and that would give us 36y. Now we're just going to do the same thing to our next one. A negative 2 times 2x is going to give us a negative 4x. And then our negative 2 times a positive 4y would give us a negative 8y. Now that we've distributed all this, we've gotten rid of these parenthesis signs, let's go ahead and work on our combining like terms. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out what are our like terms. Remember that our like terms are going to be the things with the same exponent. So we have x's here and we have y's here. Now, not exponents, the same variable. So we have x's as a variable and we have y's as a variable. Now, if we had exponents here, if one of these had like a 2 on the top, we would also look at those. We don't have any of those in this case, but we will work on some of those in just a few minutes. So let's go ahead and separate our like terms here. We have our x's together and we have our y's together. So once we start doing this, now we have them separated and we know exactly what we're going to add. Combining like terms means add, so we're always just going to have this plus sign in here. I'm going to plus whatever ones are the same. So for me on this one, it's the purple ones. It's going to be the 4x plus the negative 4x. Okay, and we're always going to add. So if you're putting this into your calculator, you would put into your calculator the 4 plus negative 4. That's going to give us a 0. So basically, these have just canceled each other out. A positive 4 and a negative 4 have just canceled each other out. So that leaves us with no x's. Let's move to the next one. Now we have 36y. Now, if you want to put the positive here, that's fine. If you don't want to put the positive, that's okay. Positive numbers don't have a sign to denote that they're positive, but negatives do. But that confuses some people. So if you need to put that positive there, that's perfectly fine. And then we have our plus sign here because remember, when we're combining, we're always adding. Then we're just going to bring down our negative 8y. So you put this into the calculator as 36 plus negative 8, and you would end up with 28y. So your answer here would be 28y. That's how you would solve number 9. Okay, so the next number I want to work on is going to be number 2. We're still on page 15. This one is going to be a little bit more difficult because we have some mixed x's and some y's here. So this one might have thrown you guys off because it's a different, same concept, but it's a different type of number. So again, this is going to look the same. We're going to distribute on both of these, okay? So let's go ahead and start with this one. We have 3 times a negative 4x. It's going to give us a negative 12x. We have 3 times a positive 5y. That would give us 15y. Then let's go to this one here. We have a negative 3x times a 2. That's kind of similar to what we've been doing here, so that seems okay. So that's just going to be a negative 6x, because the -3 times the 2 is 6, and then we add our x there. Now, this one might have thrown you guys for a loop. -3x plus 4y. So we're still just going to add the numbers first. So we have a -3 times a 4. That's going to give us a -12. And now we're going to add in this x and this y. We can't just get rid of the x and the y. We have to actually use the x and the y. However it turns out, we have to end up using that. Okay, we can't just get rid of it unless something zeroes it out. So let's move to the next step, which is our combining like terms. So we're going to look and see what is the same. Well, I see that I have some x's here. These x's are the same. And then I look and I say, oh, I have an xy. Is that going to be the same? It's not. Okay. We have x's here, but we have xy here. So this stands on its own. This one stands on its own. Okay. And then I look and this one also stands on its own. I have nothing that matches it. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this one here first, because we have two of these. This is a -12x. And again, we're always adding. We're going to bring down our 6x here. So we have a -12 plus a -6, which would give us a -18x. This is one of our answers. Now we're simply going to bring our answers down into a straight line. That's this one. I'm going to put this one in because I didn't do anything to it. It's already simplified. It's already at the smallest point. And then we're going to bring this one down here because it's already simplified. So our answer for this one should be 18x plus 15y minus 12xy. When we're combining like terms, we don't have to solve this into a neat little package to where we just have one number or two numbers. If we had different types, if this was a y, no, let me take that back. If this was a z, we could have 4 in a line here, and that could be our answer. We just have to make sure that anything's matching is broken down to its smallest point. So that's how you would solve number 2. That was number 2. Let's move on to number 4. And this is yet again a different concept. Notice we do not have any distribution in here, that all of the parentheses are gone. There are no, they've already worked that out, or it wasn't part of the original problem. So we're just going to start combining our like terms. However, I see one thing in here that is different, and that is we have two negative signs right next to each other. And you could see this represented as 5 minus -8, or you could see this as 5 minus -8. Either way, these two negatives together, there's a rule about that. And whenever there's two negatives together, we're going to change them. It's just going to, I call this change. We're just going to make both of those positive. Okay, so we can rewrite this problem. Let's just rewrite this problem in its correct form now that we've changed that. And it would be -2x plus 3y minus 5. And let's do this plus 8y and plus 9y. That is how that changes. You add that change in there, and those two negatives now become a positive. So let's go ahead and look at our like terms here. Now, I don't have any other x. All I have are y's. Let me double check my problem and make sure that's correct. That is not correct. I did not write this problem down right. So let me fix that. This actually should be a 5x. So let me bring that down. So now we have -2x plus 3y minus 5x plus 8y plus 9y. I'm glad I checked my problem. When I make mistakes, it's usually that I don't copy down the problem correctly, and that happens. So let's move on to our like terms here. I'm going to separate my x's out because I know that those are the same. And don't forget, we're going to scoop up that negative sign as we go. And then I'm going to look at my y's here. And again, I'm just scooping up that negative or positive sign with me. Now let's go ahead and add these together. I already know I'm going to add because we're combining like terms, and all I have to do is take my terms with me. 2x, I'm going to bring that down, and I'm going to bring this down. Now, when you put this into your calculator, this would be a -2 plus a -5. That gives us a negative. Let me rewrite that a little more clearly. Gives us a -7x. So that is one part of our answer. Now we've done these. We can go ahead and cross these out if we want to, just to get them out of the way. And let's do this here. Now we're going to have 2 plus signs in here because we have 3 terms. So now we just bring our terms down, 3y, 8y, and 9y. And you could put this into the calculator as 3 plus 8 plus 9, and that's going to give us 20. And we're going to add a y. So if we combined this answer, we would have this number here, -7x plus 20y. Okay, and we would put these in alphabetical order. If you had y's and x's, we're always going to go in alphabetical order. Your x would be listed first, and then if you had a number without a variable, it would go at the end. Kind of cutting off my screen down here a little bit, but I think you get the gist. Now let's move on to number 10. Again, we are on page 15. Number 10 has yet another little difference in here. However, let's go ahead and start with what we are normally doing here. Let me put my parenthesis here, how it's supposed to be, to make sure I have the problem copied down correctly, and I do. So let's go ahead and start with distributing now. We've done this already, so we should be a little bit more familiar with this now. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 5y gives us 20y. Now this is just meant to confuse us here. Since there's nothing to distribute through here, we are just basically distributing this plus sign through here. So we would make this a plus 5x and a plus y. We're just going to remove those signs or the parentheses there, and that's all you have to do. They're just trying to throw in something that looks a little different so that when you encounter it, you understand what it means on the test. Okay, so let's go ahead and combine our terms here. We have some x's and we have some y's. So let's just start to add those together. So our 4x plus our 5x, and we're always going to add. We're going to get a 9x here. This would be your answer for your x's, and your y's would be 20y plus y, which we know is 1y. So this would come to 21y. Our total answer for this would be 9x plus 21y. Now, this may have looked confusing to you up here, but really that was very simple, especially considering that we didn't have to distribute it like we did in the last problems. Let's move on to number 12. Now, this one is a little bit more difficult because we have 3 sections here. We're ultimately going to end up with more terms that we will need to combine. Also, we have this little trickster thing in here where they give us the plus sign, but nothing on the outside of these parentheses that we have to distribute. If there's no number on the outside and it's not a negative sign, we're just basically going to distribute this positive through here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our first step, which is always to distribute. So this one we will distribute because we have this -2 over here. So -2 times c would give us a -2c. A -2 times a -d would give us a +2d. Now this, we're just going to distribute this addition sign throughout, and you'll see that that's just going to keep it the same. This would be a plus c because a plus times a positive times a positive would give us a positive, and a positive times a negative is going to give us a negative. So we're still just going to keep that 3D. So in essence, we really just kind of brought that down. When you have this plus sign on the outside, it pretty much stays the same. When you have a negative sign on the outside, that's where it gets a little bit different, but we'll move into that a little bit later. So now let's finish this one here, and we have a -5 times C. It's going to give us a -5C, and a -5 times a -D, that would give us a +5D. Now, this looks like something that we're kind of familiar with when we start combining our like terms. Now we're just going to section these terms off by the C's and the D's, okay? We know that we have several C's. Don't forget, we're going to scoop up this sign with us. Make sure we get all of these C's in here. And I see 3 C's here. Now we're just going to scoop up our D's here. And we have 3 D's here also. Now what we have to do is go ahead and combine these. Let's work on our C's. We know that we're going to put a plus here and a plus here because we always combine. And then let's just bring down our numbers into these little sections. 2C, then we have a C. If you would like to put a 1C here just to let you know that that is a 1C when you're adding, that's perfectly fine. Then we'll have our 5C here. We would put this into the calculator. 2 plus 1 plus -5. And that should equal -2. Let me put it into my calculator and make sure. Okay, I found my error. When I brought this down, I did not put that this was a -2. I just dropped it down as a 2. And see, I told you my biggest error is always not bringing these down correctly. So let's just make sure I have them right. I have a -2C, a +C, and a -5C. So now when you put this into your calculator, you will have a -2 plus 1 plus a -5, and that should give you a -6C. -6C. Let's work on our D's here, and we're going to bring these down exactly like we did before. We have 2D, and I'll make sure that that's not a positive like I did before. This is a -3D, and then we have a +5D. Now, when we add all of these together, we would do 2 plus -3 plus 5, and that should give us a 4D. 4D. So now when we translate this problem out to its most simplified form, it's going to be a -6C plus 4D. Okay, now I know that's a lot to come down to all the way through here, but that's because we had 3 separate sections, not all with the distribution, but somewhat distributing all of these, and then you finally end up with this down here. Okay, so our last one on page 15 is going to be number 17. And if you look at page 15, you will see that this is the only one that is written like this. This is basically like an extra credit. So it's completely different from everything else on here. To be honest with you, we will probably not encounter this on your GED test where you have multiplication of your variables until we get to polynomials, but they will look different. But for now, let me just show you how to do this. This is actually related to more of your order of operations than it is of combining like terms at your first step. So in our order of operations, remember that's PEMDAS. So we would do our parentheses first for the P. It's PEMDAS. Okay, this would stand for our parentheses. This would be our exponents, right? Our little numbers up top. And then we have multiplication and division, which are a pair. And then we have addition and subtraction, which are a pair. So you would do all of we don't have parentheses, we don't have exponents, but we do have multiplication and we do have addition and subtraction. Now, these go from left to right. So you would do all of the parentheses left to right, all of the exponents left to right, all of the multiplication and division. Now, multiplication and division are a pair from left to right, and then all of the addition and subtraction from left to right. So that's how we are going to process this particular problem here, is using our PEMDAS. Now, if this confuses you, again, this is just like an extra credit because we really will not encounter many of these on the test. And that's what we're here to do, is to learn about the test. So let's go ahead and show you how we do these. From here on out, these little dots here, this dot is going to equal multiplication, not division. Okay, we do that because what if you had an x sitting right next to an x? You can't tell if that's really an exponent or if it's actually multiplication. So a little dot is going to reference multiplication. If it's on a computer generated site, you might see like a asterisk in here, and that would also mean multiplication. So let's go ahead and start working the problem with order of operations. So from left to right, we're going to multiply everything through here because we don't have parentheses and we do not have exponents. So now my first problem is 2 times 4x equals 8x. Now this is solved. Now what I have to do is bring down this one because this is also multiplication. So now it's 8x times 3y. That's going to give us 8xy. So we did this multiplication problem first and we got this answer. Now we're going to multiply this answer to this multiplication problem here because it's all multiplication. Now we're not going to do a minus problem here. Why? Because our minus comes next. We have to do all of the multiplication first and we have this multiplication here. So we would multiply negative 4x times a 7y. That's going to give us a negative 28xy. Now, when we start getting into polynomials, we will start multiplying the exponent or the variables. We haven't yet multiplied variables. So this is all new to you as well. Whenever you multiply them, you have an x and a y. You have to add both of them in there. So now we end up with this right here. Let's just go ahead and bring this problem down. We end up with 8xy minus 28xy. Now we see that these are what? Like terms. So we would further simplify this by 8xy plus, because we always add, negative 28xy in our parentheses here. That is going to give us a negative, my math is not right. That is not an xy. Let me try this again. See, I told you I always bring these down incorrectly. An 8x times a 3y is going to give us a 24xy. 24xy. So this number down here would be 24xy. And this would be our like term here. So we have 24xy plus negative 8xy. And that leaves us with negative 4xy. Sorry, I hope I didn't confuse you on this section right here. Let me go over it again just in case I did. 2 times the 4x is going to give us the 8x. Now we're going to introduce this 3y into here. Sorry, you can't see that. We're going to introduce this 3y into here because that's our next multiplication problem from left to right. When we do a 8x multiply times a 3y, we get 24xy. Then we did this section because, again, we're still going left to right with this multiplication. We have a 4x times negative 4x times a 7y, and that gives us our negative 28y. Now, when we combine these terms here, we end up with, when we actually write this problem out as it correctly should be, not all crooked, we end up with a 24xy minus 28xy. We're going to further simplify by combining these like terms, and we end up with 24xy plus negative 28xy. We end up with an answer of negative 4xy. So I hope that last one makes sense. Again, if you don't understand that last one, that's okay. That is a bonus question. We will not be using that type of problem. We probably will not even encounter that in the test. So I hope this helps. Until I see you next time, have a good day.